it has ceased to ever have existed. So this obeys Orwell's dictum of he who controls the present, i.e. the Guardian's internet servers, controls the past. That was an historical archive, a historical publication 5 years ago, but it's gone. You control the present, you control the past, because the past is recorded information that sits in the present.
And if you control the present, you control the future.
That's right. If you control the present, if you control history, then you control all the decisions that are made upon history. As I said before, political parties and philosophies are all limited by what is our intellectual heritage, what is the historical record. So if you control the historical record, you control what decisions can be made. If you don't know about something, you can't make an active decision. So that's extremely worrying, that in fact the internet is the easiest thing in the world. And that article is removed from The Guardian. It's gone.
Right.
And even if there's copies, The Guardian still prints. Some of its stuff it still prints physical paper. And it's in the library. But no one ever checks the library, because they look on the website, and if it's not there, people assume that it never was. They assume that these indexes are accurate, but they're not accurate. And it's not just the UK. It's Google, it's Blogger, it's WordPress, it's all over the place. People are being censored, and they don't reveal that they're censored. The reason they don't reveal that they're censored is because it reveals to the readership that they have been betrayed. The newspaper doesn't want to show that its readers that it's betraying its readers in this fundamental way. It makes the newspaper look weak to other people who might legally attack it. And it gives an example that you can get rid of information by attacking. So for all those reasons, it tries, and one more, for all those reasons it tries to keep the censorship secret. So the censorship is being self-censored. And the other reason is that often there's a legal argument that you will only encourage people to go to the library and look at the article if you mention that it was taken down, and therefore you'll contribute to whatever the offence was. So if the argument is that the material was libelous, and it very rarely is, the libel is usually just a made-up threat to try and get rid of stuff. But if the argument is, say, that it was libelous, and then the newspaper says, we removed this because we received a legal threat about libel, then the lawyers for the plaintiff, for the people who are trying to get rid of that article, will argue that by revealing the censorship attempt, you're encouraging people to go to the library and look at the libelous article. So you're not even allowed to do that. And a friend of mine, Martin Bright, political editor of the New Statesman until a year ago, lost his job over mentioning in a blog post the names of 5 Guardian articles that had disappeared. Just the names of the articles.
Right. This analogy with Orwell and 1984, of course, comes to mind, and if we look at if Orwell had written in WikiLeaks into the story, and if Orwell had said something about how he arrived at 1984, he doesn't say that much about it in the book. It's sort of just we're entering into his world, and we have to sort of guess how we went there. But in that world, WikiLeaks is removed somehow. They've been able to suppress WikiLeaks, and what WikiLeaks tries to do is an antidote to make sure that can never happen. But this epic struggle is something I guess we're afraid of, and that you're implying that we're even preparing for an epic struggle against Leviathan to try to shut WikiLeaks down. And how would they try to do that? How do we make sure that WikiLeaks can never be shut down?
Well, we have a lot of supporters in different countries. I mean, people who believe in liberty, who believe in justice. for people who want to see corrupt government suffer. There's sort of the three basic psychological types that support us in what we do. So, I mean, how can people stop it? I mean, when they see attacks on us, complain, do whatever you can in your particular area. Money is always helpful, because it's the most flexible of any instrument. Bring us leaked materials that are of really high significance, because if we keep pushing these out, not only does that sort of courageous action inspire other people, but it shows us an organisation that has influence on the world, and that people support and want to stay around. If you're in the law, with lots of volunteer lawyers, but we always need to be around for cases in particular.
Have some cake, Gilbert. Have some cake for me.
So another very interesting and somewhat disturbing thing that is happening is the harmonization of censorship between the East and the West. So whenever nation states interact on a continual basis, if their legal regimes are slightly different, the laws are different, they start to collide. That's where you get international law from. You know, this very basic notion of that when ships are at sea and they are passing each other, the approaching ship passes on the left. This basic notion is international law that means that there's not as much friction between international interactions. But this is now happening in banking, not just at sea. This is starting to happen on the internet. So this harmonization of laws of various countries is happening on the internet. So what does that mean for freedom of speech? We're going to get a harmonization. Is it going to be the laws of China? Is it going to be the Swedish Press Freedom Act? Is it going to be something like the First Amendment? Is it going to be sort of privatized censorship? Not government, but private corporations can do it. Is it going to be internet filter blacklists? Centralized blacklisting of internet sites that China is, of course, famous for, but Germany has just passed legislation to do. And there are efforts to set up EU-wide centralized blacklist filtering of the whole internet. The Australian government has passed through one of its houses laws to do that. There are voluntary schemes in the UK, Switzerland, Norway, Denmark, Netherlands to do that. Voluntary at the ISP level, not at each individual person, but at the ISP level, typically covering 90-95% of the population. Will those schemes become mandatory? That's what the push is in the EU. So that harmonization process is very dangerous, and it's going to go one way or it's going to go another. So within the next few years. So we should all try and push for it to be a little bit like the good parts, you know, the harmonization of these good and protective laws instead of, the union of these good and protective laws instead of the union of these bad laws that China has.